It's I'm Gonna Stop You Right There, the podcast that debates the burning topics in sports.
All right, what's up, everybody? We're back for week 8 of the I'm Gonna Stop You Right There podcast. I'm Tyler, that's Coop, and this will be our last episode, the last installment of this podcast.
Oh, how sad. Oh, man.
Made it to the end. Closing time is playing in our heads. And yeah, we're about halfway through the NFL season right now, with the added game. A little bit more than halfway right now. But in any case, we have a big list of topics to cover today. We're going to take a look back at some of our prior topics and see how things have shaken out since we discussed those. But yeah, it's a good slate of topics that we're going to cover today. So to start off, we'll start off the same way we have for a number of weeks now, and we will do our favorite moments since the last podcast. So I'll let you hit this one off, Coop. What was your favorite moment?
Yeah, my favorite moment from this week was just from last night, where the Celtics had a very great win against the 76ers, 88-87. And it was capped off by a game-winning block by Robert Williams at the end to close it out. So that's always a great win, and you can top it off with having a big defensive play by Robert Williams, one of the big men on the Celtics. That's always great to see. And 76ers, obviously a decent team, so that's a great win by the Celtics, and hopefully they can keep that going moving forward.
Yeah, I didn't catch that game last night, but I'll have to check it out now that I know how it ended.
Yeah,
sounds like a great ending.
Yeah, it's one of the good games that the Celtics plays. When the Celtics play, you never really know which Celtics team you're gonna get. But luckily, we got to the good Celtics team last night.
Oh, good deal. My favorite moments from the past week and some change here came from the NFL. It was the Rams-Packers game on Sunday, and it was Rasul Douglas's pick six. And this wasn't necessarily like it was a great play, but it wasn't anything like a block to win the game or anything like that. But I like this moment because Rasul Douglas he began the year on the Cardinals practice squad, and he's kind of an afterthought for that organization. And the Packers lost Jair Alexander right away to start the year, so they had to bring in corner help. And Rasul Douglas was the guy. He showed up right away for him, and he had that game-clinching interception against the Cardinals a few weeks back on Thursday Night Football. So this is just more evidence that this pickup was a great pickup by the Packers front office, and it's pieces like this that could propel the Packers into Super Bowl contention this year with all the injuries that they have. So great moment. And it's great to see this guy that was on the practice squad for a team to start the year have a big role for a contending team down the stretch here. So
terrific. That's a great story for the Packers, and
right.
Glad to see that the Packers have that depth and are able to have good performances from players lower down on the depth chart. So that's good to see.
Right, it's something they haven't had for the past few years. So we'll see how it all shakes out in the end of the year. We're going to talk a bit more about the Packers as we move on here towards the end of the podcast. So I'll table that discussion there. But let's move on to the Cowboys and the Raiders game on Thanksgiving, which super controversial ending. Lots of penalties throughout the entire game.
Oh yeah.
Raiders end up winning on a field goal. Daniel Carlson had an amazing game. If you had him on your fantasy team, you had a good day. But there's a lot to talk about with this game. First and foremost, the Cowboys getting upset. The Cowboys look like a team that were going to be a Super Bowl contender to start the year and as the year's gone on here.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a bad loss. and it kind of shows that the Cowboys have some inconsistencies. Um, so we can either talk about the officiating, or we can talk about the Cowboys. How would you like to start?
I think the officiating, just the penalties overall, would be a good thing to talk about here, since that that was the story of the game, just penalties everywhere, and big penalties that had a significant effect on the outcome of this game.
Yeah, I completely agree. So for some context, the officiating crew that covered this game, they have the most penalties called for any officiating crew in the league.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
So yeah, so they're flag happy. They like to throw the flag.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of the calls that they called during the game, um, like you said, it was I guess tightly called, if you want to call it that. It seemed like they were calling everything. It seemed like there was a stop and play all the time.
Yeah.
And they called a game, Packers game, a week prior against the Vikings, and there was some just ridiculous calls. There was a false start call on the center for lifting his head too quickly, right? So these really nitpicky things, and these lifting of the head is something that centers do all the time, every game.
Yeah, that's
So
not an unusual thing.
right, so to make a judgment on a penalty based on how quickly you think that the center raised his head before the ball was snapped is ridiculous, and that kind of gets at what happened in this game, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
There was that big call at the end of the game that put the Raiders into field goal position, the pass
Oh
interference
yeah.
call. That's been heavily debated by sports talking heads since it
Yeah.
happened.
I don't think that was a
Um,
good call. No, I no, I think
I,
referees are like are a lot of referees are very sensitive on the pass interference call, and I think on a lot of them they should just do a no call and let them play. Because on a lot of these pass interference calls, that's like a big penalty. It can have big consequences. It can be like one of the the penalties that takes up the most yardage. Like on some plays, it can be like a 30-40 yard penalty. So I didn't think it was a good call. I don't think there was enough contact by the defender to warrant a pass interference penalty. And really, when you look at the pass interference penalty, it's like, does the defender like actually make it, you know, impossible, or not quite impossible, but like significantly more difficult for the receiver to catch the ball. And it's like they're still gonna be competitive. They're still um gonna try to get the receiver to not catch the ball, obviously. But I think it's just normal context sometimes that gets the pass interference call, which I think is disappointing.
I completely agree. It seems like a lot of pass interference calls are subjective, and that they could go either way depending on who's calling it. And I like what you said about referees not calling, making these essentially no calls, especially towards the end of games where these things do have large impacts.
Yeah.
But I think
Mhm.
another thing that could be done just in general across the board, whether it's at the end of the game or the beginning of the game or the middle of the game, is making these penalties not spot fouls. Because
Uh-huh.
what we've
Yeah.
seen start to happen, at least in my opinion, is that instead of on 3rd and 10, offenses calling plays that will get them the first down, it's become something of, well, let's just chuck it in the air and hope that we have a pass interference call 45 yards down the field.
Yeah.
So if they want to keep pass interference penalties a part of the game, and call them subjectively as they've been doing, then the tie should not always go to the runner, right? So
Uh-huh.
now the assumption is, okay, the ball is going to be placed at the spot of the foul because that's where the receiver would have caught the ball, had there not been interference. But if that kind of leeway is granted to the wide receiver, and we're going to say, okay, the receiver would have caught that ball there, if the defender didn't interfere. That seems unfair, right? That seems like, okay, well, had the defender made a good defensive play, it's just like saying, had the defender made a good defensive play, that's where the pass would have gotten broken up, right? So I think this should be something more like a 5-yard penalty or a 10-yard penalty at most, something that is a bit easier to stomach. Because I mean, defensive holding is only a 5-yard penalty. It's an automatic first down, but it's a 5-yard penalty, right? So it's a lot less debilitating than an interference call that is obviously controversial much of the time. Especially when officials are missing some of the more egregious pass interference calls. We saw the one against the Rams in the playoffs not too long ago. And there's a host of other examples. So yeah, it just seems like this is a penalty that kind of breaks games, and it can ruin momentum for defenses. It's not fun. It's not fun to watch.
Definitely.
And when it happens for at least when I watch like the Packers as a fan, and not so much from an objective lens, I feel good when it happens, right? When there's a big pass interference call, but it's like a dirty kind of good, right? It's like I'm glad that happened, but I don't feel good about being glad that happened.
It's kind of a cheap way, kind of a cheap way to gain an advantage.
It's so cheap, and the defender is already at the disadvantage because they don't know where the offense is going to go. You know, they don't know where the wide receiver knows where they're going to go. And it's just cheap. It's so cheap. These guys are working their asses off to compete in this league, and they shouldn't be penalized for 60 yards in some instances for just trying to make a good play on the ball. So yeah, the pass interference is definitely one of those penalties that needs some reform around it. I think at the very least, they should not be calling these types of things towards the ends of games. It should be much more of a let them play mentality.
And unless it's like really blatant, but you sort of need to move that scale to what's a reasonable pass interference call and what's a just it's a bang play, just let them play. It was good defensive effort. And I think what you were saying about having it be a spot foul penalty is really a good point, because there'll be some penalties where it'll be the receiver will be close to the end zone, and then or even in the end zone, and then because the penalty happens in the end zone, the ball will be placed at the 1-yard line, and it's like at the end of the game, it's like, okay, that's possibly, that could very possibly be the game right there. So yeah, I don't think you should be putting the outcome of a game on a pass interference penalty. That just seems so incredibly cheap. So let's talk about the Cowboys penalties in this game. They had 14 penalties for 166 yards. Like that's insane. That's like getting up to like 2 lengths of a football field.
It's not good.
It's so while it is partially the referee's fault for being so flag happy, you got to think, the Cowboys, they've got a bit of a problem here if they're being penalized this much. Like they need to work on that, and I think the penalties they cost them this game. I think it's pretty fair to say. They had a ton of holding calls and a ton of pass interference penalties. And I think what maybe skews it to it being a team issue or a player issue rather than a officiating issue is Anthony Brown, one of the Cowboys defensive backs, got 4 pass interference calls in this game alone. Like, how do you do that? That's just, you just don't know really how to be a quarterback in that situation, I think.
That's a great point. I think that one thing that skews it the other way in terms of it being a flag happy situation is the fact that the
Mhm.
Raiders were also penalized 14 times
Oh yeah,
for
that's
less
true.
yardage,
Hmm.
but it seems at least from that stat that the refs were trying to call a quote unquote fair game.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, the Raiders and the Cowboys are the two most penalized teams in the league so far through
Okay. Hmm.
2021. So maybe it's expected that it was kind of a flag game, but you're right, to have four on one player. It's kind of like which referee did this guy make mad? Like what's happening behind the scenes here? But yeah,
Yeah.
it was just a messy game. It was a messy game. It wasn't really that fun
Yeah.
to watch either. The ending was
Yeah.
great. It was a close game, all those types of things. But the penalties just. I mean, I remember this was a Thanksgiving game, and so I was not fully tuned in, as it were, to any of the games really on
Uh-huh.
Thursday. But this is one where I found myself checking out a whole lot more, just because there was a stoppage on the field. It seemed like every other play. Um, so yeah, I think there's problems on both sides here. I know that when Mike McCarthy coached the Packers, they were also a heavily penalized team for at least a few years of his tenure there. So I don't know if it goes back to coaching in that regard, but it's definitely a multifaceted issue. And look, I think in the NFL, it would be fair to say that a penalty could be called on almost every single play, whether it's a
Hmm.
minor hold, right? Given the spectrum on which referees decide to call penalties, some are just like, what is that? Like that's the most ticky tack, like you're splitting hairs basically.
Yeah.
And then
Uh-huh.
some are just outrageous and they need to be called as penalties, right?
Yeah.
So on that spectrum, which includes basically everything, um, yeah, it just seems like there's a problem with the officiating to me. That there's a problem in how we're going about consistently calling games. And I don't know, that's got to get cleaned up by the league. It's making the NFL tough to watch on certain
Hmm.
weeks, and it comes for different teams on different weeks. For a lot of people, it depends on whether the calls are going for or against your team. But at the end of the day, the NFL as a product as a whole, I think has a major problem with officiating and just the consistency of it. And it's really being put
Yeah.
on display this year.
Yeah. One more thing about this topic, on the topic of holding penalties, I think holding penalties are called way too often. I think they're definitely the most common penalties, and I get why they have it. It's a disadvantage for usually an offensive lineman to like,
Mhm.
these big guys just like bullying around and like holding and like physically like restraining these defensive players from getting to the quarterback. But sometimes they'll hold for like, doesn't even seem like a second, and then they'll let go, and then they
Mhm.
still get called the penalty. What do you think about this? Do you think that holding calls are also a bit too sensitive and get called too often also?
I definitely do, and I think that holding, just like pass interference, is penalized too aggressively. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is like a defensive or a defensive holding in the secondary is a 5 yard penalty. It is an
Hmm.
automatic first down, which I kind of understand that. But if there's, for example, holding happening on the offensive line, for example,
Hmm.
instead of a 10 yard penalty, I think that should definitely be a 5 yard penalty, and I think that would even things out if referees are going to continue to call holding as they are right now, which is
Hmm.
very subjective.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, one thing I wrote about last week in one of my articles was the fact that we should be normalizing uh, discussions with referees or even replays of penalties. Just with the technology that we have now. Now, the argument against that is it would slow down the pace of the game and things like that. But I think that if you run that cost benefit analysis, I think that more discussions on the case of officials and more picking up of flags would produce a better product on the field, um, especially towards the end of the games. I feel like if we can review every change of possession, every touchdown after 2 minutes, then why not every penalty, right? Why couldn't we have an official ruling from New York, say, for
Mm-hmm.
the pass interference call on the Cowboys at the end of the game on
Yeah,
Thursday? It would just, I think, shed more light on why these penalties are being called. It would pass the buck from the officials on the field who are having to make snap decisions to a third party. And I think it would just make the league better in general, more fair in general. So I agree
definitely.
on the holding stuff. I think the holding penalty shouldn't be 10 yards. It should be 5 yards. Um, and I would like to see referees call that a bit less frequently,
Yeah.
and a bit
Mm-hmm.
more only for the egregious ones that they can show the replay on TV and we can all say, well, yeah, that he held him, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I do agree.
Great.
So let's focus back in on the Cowboys just to end this little topic here. Do you think the Cowboys bounce back tonight against the Saints?
I think they do. Yeah. I think they're still a very solid team, and they're playing a Saints team who's also not been very consistent this year, teetering at that 500 mark. In the Saints are playing without Kamara, so that's going to be a big factor here. Um, one interesting thing about this game is that the Saints are starting Taysom Hill in this game, so we'll see how that works out. I personally think that the Saints should have started Taysom Hill right after Jameis Winston got injured, because you know they gave all this money to Taysom Hill, and then they're still like, we're gonna start Trevor Siemian over you. Like what? I don't get that. So, and Taysom Hill has been pretty good in the past. Even as just a utility player, like just coming in and running the wildcat or the quarterback draws. So I'm not sure if that's still how they see him, but if you're still just going to use him as a utility player, then why pay him so much money? So that's just sort of another can of worms I've opened. But yeah, we'll see how the Cowboys and Saints do with the return of Taysom Hill as starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. The Taysom Hill, the new contract that he got is definitely a bit weird, at least from
Yeah.
the outside looking in. It makes me think that maybe the Saints organization either knows something that the general population doesn't, or has plans
Uh-huh.
that the general population isn't privy to. But in any case, I agree with you. Right when Jameis Winston went down, I think that that he should have been the guy. And I even made the argument at the beginning of the year that Taysom Hill should have done a 50-50 split with Jameis Winston,
Oh yeah.
particularly in the off chance that one of the quarterbacks got hurt. At least the other one would have had ample playing time already
Yeah,
with the offense to start the year. But
definitely.
I agree. I think the Cowboys get right tonight. I think the Cowboys win this game, mostly because the Saints will be without Kamara and two starting tackles on the offensive line. I think that's going to make it real tough on Taysom Hill in his kind of season debut here. But I think the big question for the Saints and Hill is, we know that Taysom Hill can be that utility guy. We know that he can run the options. We know that he can do the quarterback draws. Can he be a consistent passer from the pocket?
Yeah.
Because you in this league, you definitely need both of those things. And I think that when the Saints get healthy, that is when they get Alvin Kamara back, they get their offensive line healthy. With Taysom Hill at the quarterback position, you could kind of have a paradigm shifting type of offensive scheme with those two guys in the backfield. i.e., Hill and Kamara. That's a two-headed monster that teams probably won't want to face. So if anything, even if the Saints lose tonight, which I think they will, I think it'll give them a good idea, at least what the potential is there for Hill to kind of rein it in as a pocket passer, while adding that unpredictability that he brings with his feet and with his kind of trick plays, so to speak. So it's going to be a fun game to watch, I think, just for that aspect alone. I do think the Cowboys could. This is a sneaky trap game for the Cowboys, right? It's a get right game for sure. And the Cowboys, I think, are a good team, but the Saints, they've given the Bucs problems this year. They give the Packers problems to start the year. They're an inconsistent team, but when they're good, they're good. And we'll see how hard it is to game plan for a guy like Taysom Hill on the Cowboys defensive side of the ball. But this could be a sneaky game for the Cowboys. They could find themselves on a bit of a 2-game skid here if they're not careful. So it'll be a fun one. I'm excited.
Yeah.
All right. So to round out the last episode here of the pod, we're going to take a look back on a few of the topics that we covered earlier in the series here, just to see how things have played out since that time. So to get started, we're going to talk about Kyrie Irving and the continued vaccine saga out there in Brooklyn. So he still hasn't gotten vaccinated. He's still not with the team. I'm going to open this one up to you to start. What are your thoughts on this now, a few weeks after we first discussed it and the news first broke?
Well, it's I guess you could say disappointing for the Nets and their fans, obviously, and the entire NBA community, I would say, because he's a great player to watch, and he's a big part of the Nets team. So it is disappointing that we're still here and he still hasn't returned. So you could say that he is firm in what he believes in, but at what cost? Like he's not getting paid. He's not playing basketball. So I wonder what he is doing right now. I wonder. Do you know? Do you have any guesses for what he's doing right now?
I really doubt, but yeah, this whole thing is gotten so strange. Like you said, he's not getting paid. He's not playing with the team, and this is a Nets team that when they got KD and Kyrie, it was championship or bust. It was nobody's gonna stop this team, right? And now it's just like, okay, Brooklyn's a bit of an afterthought. So it's all very strange. And since this news broke, actually in the wake of this news breaking, I wrote an article about vaccine hesitancy, just in sports in general. And I still believe in the conclusion that I came to there, which is that it seems like Kyrie it's not so much that he doesn't want to get vaccinated. It's that now it's this, I'm defending my personal freedoms and my right to choose type thing. And I guess the conclusion that I came to in that article was that as the sports media and fans and things like that continue to call players out specifically for being unvaccinated, they're just digging in further and further and further, right? So if Kyrie Irving, this whole story hadn't been so covered and hadn't been so talked about by fans and media members and things like that, if there weren't so many opinions out there about him specifically, then maybe by now he'd be vaccinated and maybe by now he'd be rejoined with the team. But it seems like now he's got this vendetta against all those who oppress him by saying he ought to be vaccinated. And it's really interesting. He's one of those guys where, we know that when he starts to believe something, he's not one to change his belief, i.e. flat earth and things like that. He's already prone to these kind of extravagant types of beliefs, and this is no different. And it sucks now because he has other athletes and prominent people coming to his defense. Floyd Mayweather came out and said he's not part of the sheep, and like that Kyrie's fighting the good fight, whatever that means. So this is totally the whole issue has been obfuscated from, okay, how do we save the most people's lives the quickest, right? Which is vaccines, as we've seen, as there's ample evidence for. It's more from that into how do we protect ourselves against some form of weird tyranny or something like that. And so because of that, because the goalpost has been moved from how do we save lives to how do I defend myself against overreach from, I don't know, the people that want to save other people's lives. I don't think Kyrie's going to get vaccinated this year. I don't think he's going to get vaccinated for this virus. I think that he'll probably be a healthy scratch for the remainder of the season. And it is going to cost Brooklyn the chances at a title. There's far too many other good teams with vaccinated players. That is with their full team in the building and playing in games. That Brooklyn will not stand a chance. KD cannot carry this team on his own, at least not against the best contenders in the league. And I'm not surprised that we've come to kind of this recap and nothing much has changed. If anything, he's dug in further. It's sad. It's sad. At this point, I know earlier when we first talked about this, I was much more in a place of like, well, I think we should continue to fight to make it, make the argument that people should get vaccinated, right? But at this point in time, I'm taking a hopeless type of stance. And I don't think that people who weren't going to get vaccinated before aren't going to get vaccinated now. Kyrie Irving is included in that.
Wait, weren't you saying that it should be mandated? Isn't that what you were saying?
I think in a perfect world, this simply would be mandated, just league-wide, countrywide, honestly, if we want to extend it beyond sports. But league-wide for sure, for staying in the realm of sports. And leagues have kind of done that. The NFL especially with their strict protocols. And the NBA to a degree with certain cities mandating it, certain arenas mandating it. But yeah, no, I think it should be an across-the-board mandate. And I still believe that, definitely. I just don't think that we're going to bring people to the table on this. I think that opportunity has come and gone. And unfortunately, it might take something really, really bad, like a new variant that is twice as deadly, twice as contagious, that type of thing to force people into the light, so to speak. Even then, I'm not so sure. And Kyrie Irving is one of those
even then,
you could see 500,000 plus people die and still be like, nope, I don't care. And he's basically saying, I don't care. And it's beyond frustrating. It's immoral at this point. So it's sad. It's just sad.
Kyrie has shown that he's not a team player. He's not willing to do something for the good of the team and the greater NBA community. He is like, nope, this is all about me. All of the other players have, at least to our knowledge, seems like the vast majority of other Nets players and NBA players have gotten vaccinated, for the good of the team, and so that they can actually play this season and get paid. But Kyrie's like, no, this is all about me. This is what I want to do, and I don't care who it affects, but I'm not doing it. So yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. He's just, he's a stubborn guy, and he's
the weirdest thing for me about Kyrie is, like you said, this decision seems super selfish, right? He's
Yeah.
making it all about him. But from his words, he's saying that he is standing up for people that don't want to get the vaccine. And in some way, shape, or form, he is turning this around and saying, no, this isn't selfish. This is actually selfless. I'm actually the knight in shining armor for those that don't want to get vaccinated and want that right to choose. And that's dangerous. When we've gotten to the point where people are changing objective facts about a situation in their favor, we've gotten to a point of no return. And it seems a bit hopeless at this point for Kyrie. And just to give some context to what you were saying, back in September, the NBA reported that 95% of its players were fully vaccinated. So he is of a small minority of players who are still holding out, and probably the biggest name player that is still holding out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really dark. It's taken a much darker turn, in my opinion, this whole story than originally, when it was just I want the right to choose for my body. Now it's this whole weird thing where he is taking credit for being some kind of martyr or being the last line of defense against some form of tyranny. And it's dangerous. It's really dangerous. It's indicative of kind of the precarious place that our society is in as a whole. So I don't know. I hope he sees the light, but I doubt he will at this point. If anything, he's just going to keep doubling down and keep digging in farther.
Yeah. One more thing I would say is, like, does he just think that the league is just gonna cave in to his demands? Like, the NBA is not going to change their policies just because he's held out for this long. It's like, all right, Kyrie, you win, you outlasted us, so now we'll let you play again. No, they're not gonna do that. So is it like Kyrie's just never gonna play in the NBA again? It's
right.
strange.
That's he's said in public statements that this shouldn't call into question his love for the game, right? Like, his love for the game trumps all things, and like that will never change. This is about something totally different. So to me, there's two scenarios here. Number one, either he doesn't love the game as much as he professes to, right? He just doesn't. He just happens to be a very talented player who could take it or leave it, right?
Yeah.
Or this just shows the strength of misinformation and how pervasive that can be. Because if you were to say, Kyrie Irving, you have to choose between playing basketball or not playing, and the difference is getting a shot that is proven safe, effective, and that a huge percentage of the population has received without issue. It seems like a no-brainer, right? It seems like if you love the game as much as you say you do, then of course you're going to get the shot that we know is safe, that we know is effective, that we know saves people's lives. Like, it seems like a no-brainer. So yeah, either the misinformation that he's been consuming is so strong and he's just so in deep now that he can't take himself out, or he doesn't really love the game. And either way, it's not great. Either way, it's a bad picture to paint. But one is dangerous for society, and the other one is just like, okay, well, then just retire, right? Like, go be an analyst somewhere or something like that.
Yeah.
If you truly don't love the game enough to do this. So it's sad. It's very sad.
Yeah.
Let's move on to a happier note. Let's hop back over
what a transition. It's always a sort of a
right
weird transition going from now back
on
to the not depressing topics.
Yeah. I'm glad we started with that one and didn't end the entire podcast talking about Kyrie Irving. How sad that is. But anyway, so a few weeks back we talked about Tom Brady's return to Gillette Stadium to face the Patriots. And we both had some differing opinions on it. We talked about whether or not Patriots fans would receive Brady in a good way or in a bad way. And we kind of talked about the perspective of the Patriots. I took the line that the move for Tom Brady made sense because it didn't seem feasible to re-sign a 44-year-old quarterback for the Patriots at the time. And we both ended that discussion by saying that, well, we thought that game might be a blowout because the Patriots started the year a bit shaky. They're kind of fitting all their pieces together, and Tom Brady and the Bucs are the reigning Super Bowl champions. So we both thought it would be a blowout. Turns out it wasn't a blowout. Turns out it was a very close game. Patriots had a huge chance to win at the end. And now the Patriots look like a contender in the AFC, maybe the top contender in the AFC. And we'll talk about that more as we go here. But I'm going to throw this over to you as the resident Patriots fan. What are your reactions since this has happened?
Yeah, this has been quite the turn of events, because it did seem like then the Bucs are going to keep being a dominant team in the NFC, and the Patriots are still sort of going to be this mediocre team. And in this game, the Patriots totally surprised us and sort of started their rise to sort of the top of the AFC with only losing by 1 and playing very strong, especially on defense. Like only allowing 17 points to the Bucs and allowing Tom Brady to not even throw 1 touchdown. So this game was a big surprise, and just on the storyline of how Patriots fans were going to receive Brady, they received him well. There was a video on the mega, what is that called? The big board, the jumbotron. Yeah. I was about to say Megatron. I'm just like, no, that was a nickname for Calvin Johnson.
Yep.
the jumbotron, with all of some Brady's clips with the Patriots. So I think a majority of the fans, were like, yeah, go Brady. Brady's back. Thanks Brady. I think we were all surprised on just how close this game was, and showed that now, wow, maybe this Mac Jones kid is for real, and that this defense is for real.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And another thing that I've kind of taken away, more so than just watching the Patriots' ascension this year, that kind of started with this game, honestly, that the fact that they kept it close. This is kind of the turning point, even though it ended in a loss. But there was a lot of people when the Patriots had a rough year last year and then started the year shaky this year that were like, well, Bill Belichick, that, he's not a good coach. It was all Tom Brady. Tom Brady is what made him. That's
actually kind of what I thought. I was sort of a Belichick hater. I was just like, oh man,
I never understood that. I see. So for me, it's like I always thought that both could be true. That Brady could be this generational winning person. He's just going to win wherever he goes until he retires. And then after retirement, he'll probably keep winning and whatever he does after that. But it could also be true that Bill Belichick was a great coach. The dude won multiple Super Bowls. He's always got a team in the mix. And when you lose a player that you've had for 20 plus years, that you've had enormous success with, of course, there's going to be growing pains to get back to that place. And they've done it so quickly. 1 year is all it took for them to right the ship. And Bill Belichick, you have to give him credit for that. With all of the spending that the Patriots did in the offseason, obviously that's the front office, but Bill Belichick definitely has a say in that. The way that he's coached Mac Jones put him in a position to win. The way he has that defense, the defense playing, Bill Belichick deserves credit here. And any slander that he got prior, this has proven that was unwarranted. Not specifically from you, but from anybody who was like, Bill Belichick is washed. He was never a good coach, things like that. Even though it did look that way, it definitely looked that way for a solid year and some change. But I hope that the Patriots resurgence here kind of puts the Bill Belichick hate to rest, because it's undeserved. And that was a really fun game to watch. And I mean, who knows? It would be a hell of a Super Bowl to see Tom Brady and the Bucs playing the Patriots and Bill Belichick.
Oh man,
it's crazy that it's a possibility right now. It doesn't even seem like that's that far off from something that's possible this year in the realm of possibilities. So,
can you imagine? Awesome. Oh man, the sports world would absolutely lose their mind if that happened. Would. Like if sports media will be like, "Oh my God, this is insane."
It would be ridiculous. And that's the Super Bowl I want. If the Packers can't make it, I think that would be an awesome, awesome Super Bowl, because we don't know how many years Tom Brady has left. I'm sure this won't be his last season by any stretch of the imagination, but how many more chances would we have at that matchup in the Super Bowl? Bill Belichick, Tom Brady. It'd be awesome. It'd be very cool. So in that same discussion here, we talked a bit about AFC contenders back a few weeks prior. I believe we talked about the Ravens being contenders. We talked about the Bengals looking hot. Titans, of course, were in the mix. But the Chiefs, for both of us, were kind of on the back burner. And I even said I do not trust the Chiefs back at that point. To me, they looked like a team that was going to need a defensive rebuild and perhaps a bit of an offensive rebuild too, just to kind of re-up on the offensive line and figure out some things as far as receivers go behind Tyreek Hill. But now the Chiefs have resurged a bit, and I'll be the first to say that in the same line as the Bill Belichick stuff that I just said, how nobody should have doubted him, and kind of the evidence that he's put forward that he is a fantastic coach. I think that I was a doubter of Patrick Mahomes early on this season, and I was wrong for that. He's put enough evidence out there that he is a generational, just maybe one of the best QBs to ever play the game. And as long as he is there, the Chiefs have a chance. And it looks like now they're picking up the pace again, and they're going to be in the mix at the end of the year as legit contenders. So in Patrick Mahomes we trust.
I definitely agree with what you were saying. As long as they have Patrick Mahomes, they're in it. And they basically have had all of their pieces from their Super Bowl run last year. So it's not unfair to say that they could be contenders again this year. And with the veteran coaching of Andy Reid, I feel like they're in a good spot. The AFC West is tough this season. It's very competitive. So I think it's still sort of anyone's game right now. I think some obviously more than others, but the Chargers are only one game back from the Chiefs. So, I think the Chiefs are sort of more the favorite right now, but I think there's still a lot of football left to be played, and a lot of things could happen. The Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos are all in a three-way tie for second place in the AFC West. So I think a lot of things could happen in the AFC West.
Yeah, the AFC in general has just been a crapshoot this year. We don't know who's good. We don't know who's not good. Nobody looks consistent.
Yep.
So the AFC is going to be interesting coming out. So I guess with that, let's move on to some updated Super Bowl picks. So I can just give mine first since we're talking about the Chiefs. I actually think the Chiefs are going to come out of the AFC West. I don't trust the other teams there. Raiders, for obvious reasons, inconsistency abound there. I don't think that the Broncos and Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think that's an option. going to be consistent enough to get them to the postseason. And the Patrick Mahomes effect is, I think, what's going to get the Chiefs over that hump. And once the Chiefs get to the playoffs, that's a tough out. Nobody wants to play Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So on the AFC side, I think the Chiefs, with their resurgence here at the end of the year, have a great chance at making the Super Bowl. They're my AFC Super Bowl pick. On the NFC side, that's a tougher decision. Most definitely a tougher decision, although I think it was made easier for me, at least in this last couple weeks games. I have the Rams there to start the year. And I still think the Rams could pull together and be a good team. They have a good defense when they want to be good, and a great offense. Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback. That being said, I think that the Robert Woods injury, it's really showed how big of a blow that was to this offense. So I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders anymore. The Cardinals are interesting. If they stay healthy, I think that they're going to be a tough out no matter what. I do think that they're not as well coached, though, and they don't have the depth that the Green Bay Packers have. And I'm a fan. I'm biased. I'll say all those things. That being said, I am a realist when it comes to the Packers' chances. A couple of weeks ago, I predicted that they lose to the Vikings, as you did as well. They ended up losing that game. And, you know, they do have a lot of injuries this year, but they've shown that they have depth, and their front office, has shown that they can make the right personnel decisions at the right times to put a winning team on the field. And yeah, I mean, from the whole last dance thing that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams posted at the beginning of the year, this just feels like they're going to get over the hump this year. I think their defense is good enough, especially once they have Zadarius Smith, Jared Alexander. Once they have those two guys back, the defense is going to be tough to beat. Rashawn Gary is coming on in a big way, and the Packers offense, once they get in a rhythm, they're tough to stop. So yeah, Packers versus Chiefs is my Super Bowl pick. We'll finally get to see Rodgers versus Mahomes, which we have not yet been able to see even this year in their scheduled game. Rodgers wasn't able to play. So yeah, that's my Super Bowl pick. I don't know who wins that game. As a fan, I'm going to say Packers take it home, but objectively speaking, it's a toss-up for me at this point. Too early in the season.
Wow, how surprising. The guy wearing a Packers shirt picks the Packers to go to the Super Bowl. Oh man. Just kidding. I also think that the Packers are going to be in the Super Bowl. I think just from a consistency standpoint, the Packers look like the top team right now. Obviously, you have the Rams and the Cardinals, but they're still a fairly young, inexperienced team. Who knows how they're gonna fare the rest of the season? I think the Packers have the experience and the depth, as you said, to make it to the Super Bowl. But I disagree with your AFC pick. I think the Patriots are still getting hot, and they're gonna get even hotter. And I think the Patriots are gonna return to the Super Bowl to face the Packers. You know, with 6-time Super Bowl winning coach Bill Belichick, who is still the man that we thought he always was, despite his earlier struggles. This offense is cooking right now with Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne and Hunter Henry. You know, touchdown machines. You know, I think it's easy to say that we could have a Patriots Chiefs AFC Championship game as we did a couple years ago, and you know, we know how that turned out. The Patriots are able to beat the Chiefs in a close game. So I think the Patriots have that edge over the Chiefs. They've played them before, and they know what to do about them. And an honorable mention from the NFC, I'd say, is the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys on paper are one of the most talented teams in the NFL. But again, it's a consistency issue. They always seem to fall apart when it matters most, at the end of the season, and I don't see this team playing up to that level that they can win in in clutch games. So that's my pick. We'll see if it works out.
I will say NFC definitely can't rule out Tom Brady.
Mhm.
That he's always going to be a contender, just the same way as Bill Belichick and Patrick Mahomes will always put their teams in good
Oh,
places.
definitely.
So
Hmm.
Bucks are going to be a tough out as well. Okay, so to wrap up the podcast in totality here, we're going to do an end of the podcast player awards so far this season. So we have the MVP award, the Offensive Player of the Year award, the Defensive Player of the Year award, and the Rookie of the Year award. And let's just go piece by piece here. So my MVP pick thus far is not a quarterback, which already makes it unlikely that it'll come true. But I'm rolling with Jonathan Taylor, running back out of Indianapolis there. And yeah, I mean, after Derrick Henry's injury, there's really no other running back that's competing with him for the top running back spot in the league. And he's putting together a year that is absolutely ridiculous. He's a second-year player. His biggest downfall coming out, at least according to scouts, was that he was overused at Wisconsin. And he definitely was. I watched a lot of Wisconsin games, and Jonathan Taylor would have 30 plus touches a game consistently. So that's an issue, sure. But as of right now, as of this season, the dude is playing out of his mind. And he is really the backbone of that entire offense. Carson Wentz does not have the success that he has without a good running game. And in a lot of ways, Carson Wentz, I think, should be having more success because of how good Jonathan Taylor has been. That being said, I do think that the low interception numbers for Carson Wentz are in some way, shape, or form attributable to their running game, because everybody has to play the run. They have to respect Jonathan Taylor. He's currently the league leader in rushing yards. He's up there in touchdowns. He's shown that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And yeah, I think it's high time that the MVP award goes to somebody other than a quarterback. And I think that he is a great candidate this year.
Great. So my MVP candidate for this year is Lamar Jackson. And it might come as a surprise, but when you look at how the Ravens have done this year, there's no way they're where they are without the play of Lamar Jackson. Jackson has carried this team this year, and he's just been that guy to lead the Ravens as a dual threat, through the air and on the ground. Lamar Jackson is just been like great this year, and he's been one of the top fantasy quarterbacks. And just mobile quarterbacks are the future. That's really a like a terrific dynamic you can have there, with being able to use your legs to scramble around and throw passes, or just take it yourself on design runs or undesigned runs. So Lamar Jackson is my pick for MVP, for the reason that if as I said before, the MVP is the person that means the most to the team, is the most valuable. If they weren't there, the team wouldn't be as good. And that describes Lamar Jackson on the Ravens this year.
I definitely can't argue with that. Yeah, spot on. If that is the metric and the only metric, then I think Lamar Jackson definitely deserves the award, no doubt. So for offensive player of the year, this is a candidate that I was going back and forth with for MVP, and that's Cooper Kupp out in LA. He's putting together an insane season. I don't think anybody saw it coming from a guy like him. He's leading the league in receiving yards. He's up there in PFF grades, along with Devontae Adams. He leads the league in receiving touchdowns, and he's just been the most consistent part of that offense. I think I've seen betting lines at like over or under 7 catches. So it's like if you can take the over on 7 catches, you know that he's a consistent part of that offense week in and week out. And it's kind of incredible what he's been able to do over there just with a simple quarterback change. And that's for the most of the season so far, Robert Woods. And now that's with Odell Beckham. So Cooper Kupp is my offensive player of the year. I think that if he continues on the route that he's on, he's going to run away with this one unless Jonathan Taylor squeaks in for this award and not the MVP award. Yeah, Cooper Kupp lighting it up right now. I didn't see it coming. I'm not sure anybody else did. And you love to see it.
Tyler, I saw this coming because people named Cooper do very well in these sorts of things. So yes, like clap it up. Yep. Yes. Yeah. So Cooper Kupp has been actually a very solid wide receiver for quite some time, but he's really turned it up a notch this year. So my offensive player of the year is another wide receiver, and it's Deebo Samuel from the 49ers. This dude is also having a terrific season so far. In terms of fantasy points, he's averaging 21.2 points per game. That's great. That's what you want to have. He's the number 2 ranked fantasy wide receiver. He's got over 1,000 yards this season with 1,006 yards. He's got 18 yards per catch. He's got 5 touchdowns. Not a whole lot, but as Tyler said before when we were brainstorming this, the 49ers like to run a lot and when they're in the red zone. So not all that's surprising. And he's got a long of 83 yards on a catch. So that's pretty great right there. And I'm on this sports talk show at college called The Box Score, and we were doing this mystery player to see which one we would rather have. Like we were comparing stats, and we didn't know who the player was, and like I think Deebo Samuel was sort of like the underdog because it was sort of like earlier in the season. We didn't really we weren't hearing a lot about Deebo Samuel. I think because he's on the 49ers, and the 49ers aren't one of the top teams this year. So he's not being talked about a lot. But when it was shown that Deebo Samuel had these great stats, like the guy that had to defend the pick, so you would pick a player that had these stats before you knew who it was.
You just that's cool.
Yeah, it was yeah, I stand behind it. Deebo Samuel, he's a great player, and he's having a great year, obviously, with all these stats and having this level of production, even on a sort of subpar 49ers team. That's really impressive.
It really is. And Deebo Samuel too. He's playing with Jimmy Garoppolo, who I think is a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. And so even more, hats off to him because his stat lines are insane. Yeah. Just looking at him now, it's like this dude's lighting it up, and he's quietly lighting it up.
Yeah,
he's not talked about like Cooper Kupp or some of these other receivers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that pick a lot. If he keeps coming on and the 49ers kind of make a little run here at the end, he's going to get the recognition that he deserves. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So switching sides of the ball, the defensive player of the year, I am taking Myles Garrett The Browns are lackluster, and Myles Garrett is perhaps not getting the kind of attention that he would be if the Browns were winning as a team. But already on the year, Garrett has 14 sacks. So that he's going to way outshine previous sack numbers from past years as long as he stays healthy. And in all the other important defensive categories, that's tackles, solo tackles, tackles for a loss, at least defensive line categories, he's already on pace to double those numbers from years past. So he's playing out of his mind. If he stays healthy, I don't see that changing. The Browns defense has actually not been terrible this year, inconsistent, but statistically they have not been terrible, and he's a big reason why. And the only thing that I think could prevent him, other than injury, from getting this award this year is the fact that the Browns team as a whole is not playing up to the standard that everybody thought they would be to start the year. But yeah, at this point in the year, defensive player of the year for me is Myles Garrett, and it's for me not close. But I'm interested to see what your pick is here.
Yeah. So my pick is J.C. Jackson from the Patriots, one of the top cornerbacks in the league and one of the cornerstones of this dominant Patriots defense right now. He has got 7 interceptions this season. That's second to only Trevon Diggs. He's got 46 tackles, which is pretty good considering he's a cornerback, and cornerbacks don't usually get that many tackles. So, he's not called Mr. INT for a reason.
Right.
So he's had a great year, and he's been with the Patriots a while, and he's really having a breakout year for them this year. And when you have good cornerback play, that's when your team succeeds. So J.C. Jackson is my pick for Defensive Player of the Year this year.
I like that. Honorable mention too for Diggs. He's also having just an incredible year.
Oh yeah.
A wide receiver lined up in the defensive backfield. So yeah, there's a lot of contenders on the defensive side. That's for sure. I like that pick though. I definitely like that pick.
Did you see that video from Trevon Diggs' son where he was like doing a Thanksgiving message, and he was saying like, thanks to all the players who throw my dad the football.
I did not see that. That's hilarious though. Oh my God. How old is his son? Is it a young kid?
Yeah, he's pretty young. I'd say he's probably like 6, 7, around that age.
Better.
Yeah,
even better. That's hilarious.
So
right.
He's just like roasting all the quarterbacks in the NFL.
Right, that's hilarious. Oh my God, I love that. Yeah. I'm gonna have to look that up now. That's hilarious. Absolutely. I'm gonna let you take the Rookie of the Year award here to start us off.
Okay, so the Rookie of the Year.
This should come as no surprise to anybody, by the way.
Yeah. As me being a Pats fan, and who our quarterback is, bam, it's Mac Jones. Wow, what a surprise. Mac Jones is just having an incredible year this year. Outpacing by far any of the other rookie quarterbacks. He's got a 70.3% completion percentage. He's got a 98.7 QBR. This guy is just bringing the Patriots back. He's got the poise of a veteran. He's got a completion percentage that I don't think I've ever seen with almost any quarterback. Let alone how old they are. And this guy has just come into this offense and works like a charm. So congratulations, Mac. You've done it.
Yeah, I all kidding aside from the start of that, it's not a surprising pick, but it is a good pick. That was my original pick, but I figured that would be yours, so I'd let you have Mac Jones there. And yeah, I can't say enough. He looks like a veteran QB, and the freaking Patriots, man. They had one off year and they're like, I'm back. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
So yeah,
Wasn't
hats
too
off.
long.
Right. And it's
Yep.
it's crazy because coming out of the draft, it was the Trevor Lawrence show, and you basically don't hear about Trevor Lawrence anymore.
Yeah.
Granted, he's playing for the Jaguars, not having a great year as a team
Mm-hmm.
down there in Jacksonville. But yeah, credit to Mac Jones. He's playing incredibly well, and he's got that team contending and looking
Mm-hmm.
scary as a contender. And it's not just like this is a playoff team. It's like this team could be a great team come postseason play.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great pick. My pick is on the defensive side of the ball. Micah Parsons, linebacker for the Cowboys. He's come on incredibly strong for a Cowboys team that has kind of in years past been known for good linebacker play. And then in the past few years, they've kind of fallen off in that category, especially with Jalen Smith not kind of returning to the greatness that he was at prior to his injuries. But that being said, Micah Parsons looks like he's going to be a staple in the league for a long time. He kind of brings back that aggressiveness that the Cowboys were missing at the second level there on their defense. And I think tonight actually is going to be a big test with Taysom Hill taking over for the Saints. It'd be a bigger test if Kamara was playing and they had a healthy offensive line. But that being said, it'll be a fun one to watch in terms of his play. So yeah, that's my pick. I like taking defensive guys when it comes to these end of the year awards. And he's had a stellar start to his rookie campaign so far this season, as we've gotten just over the halfway point here. So
Yeah. Micah Parsons has had an incredible year for a rookie, and really for any player. The fact that he's a rookie and he's making these kind of plays is quite remarkable. So yeah, that's a good pick right there. Micah Parsons. Wow.
I mean, his tackle numbers are tops in the league. He's getting to the QB. I think let me check this real quick. Yeah, let's see. The last game they played, he had 5 hits on the QB alone.
Wow.
So he, not only is he bringing kind of the run stopping, the tackling, the aggressive play back there, the speedy play back there, but he's also getting to the quarterback from the linebacker position. So yeah, it's good things moving forward for the Cowboys. As you said earlier, they could be sneaky contenders this year if they can get everything working in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be a big reason for that if they do get things working in the right direction. So yeah. And I mean, with that, do you have any final words on anything that we've covered?
Oh man, it's been a tumultuous NFL season so far. It's been sort of the narrative the past couple of weeks that we don't really know who's good anymore. With all these upsets, and I think that very possibly could continue to be the story. So, it's been an exciting NFL season, because you never really know the teams that are the favorites. So it's sort of a mystery. So it's going to be an interesting, last several weeks of the season to see how things shake out.
I agree. It's been a weird season. Everything about this NFL season feels very weird.
Yeah.
But in that same breath, I'm excited too. It seems like there's a lot of contending teams this year. There's a lot of questions around a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of good storylines. Rookies are having years that I feel like rookies haven't had in past seasons. And that's really exciting to see.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'm excited about the end of the NFL season here. I think it'll be a great end no matter the outcome. And it seems like with all these teams contending, we're going to have close games. We're going to have exciting finishes. As long as the refs don't mess all that up and make it unwatchable, it should be a great end of the year. So
there you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Coop, it has been fun. It's been a great
real fun
doing this podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, and I wish you all the best moving forward in your career, the rest of your collegiate career, and then beyond that, wherever it takes you. I'm sure it'll be something to do with the sports world. But yeah, all the best to you.
Oh yeah. Thanks. You too. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Don't know how many of you are out there, because we don't, have the most subscribers on this YouTube channel. But for anybody out there, we appreciate you listening. All right. See you guys later.
Signing off.